Hello, boys and girls, moms and dads, and grandmas and grandpas that are watching this video this day. Um, Again, want to take some time to read another chapter of the book that we started reading last time, which is Mary's Story of Christmas, called Mary's First Christmas, again, written by Walter Wangerin Jr. and pictures by Timothy Ladwig. Last time we began hearing Mary's story, looking at chapter 1, and today we continue the story with chapter 2. And as I mentioned last time, as you hear Mary tell Jesus the story of Christmas, I want you to think about what she was feeling as she went through that experience, and I want you to think about how you would feel if you were going through what Mary and Joseph and Jesus did. So let's look at chapter 2 of this story. Yeshi, it's time to come in. Mary is calling through the window lattice to her son, who is still outside in the night. The straw mattress is already unrolled. Yeshi, come. The room they sleep in is also the room she cooks in. Her small clay stove sits in the far corner together with 3 copper cooking pots, 4 earthen bowls, 2 water jars, and 7 goatskin bags filled with grain and lentils and salt and spices. When they eat, they sit on the floor at a nice round mat. Ah, Yeshi, look at you, Mary cries as Jesus enters the room. His hair is tangled. He's covered in dust. His bandage is dirty and loose. Mary unties the bandage altogether. Oh no, she whispers. The wound is an angry red, infected. Yellow pus runs from the corners. Sit down, Mary says. She goes to a pot of warm water and mixes salt into it. She returns with the water and a rag and a jar of medicine and sits down beside her son. I have to wash it, she says. I'm sorry, Yeshi, but when I wash it, it will burn. The burning is the healing. Hush, hush, says Mary. She puts her left arm around her son. With her right hand, she begins to wash his face, his forehead, and his terrible wound. Ow, Jesus gasps. His eyes go very wide, and then the tears come into them and start to run down his dirty cheeks. Oh, I know, his mother whispers, but it must come clean. Soon Mary is smearing medicine on his clean wound, an ointment made from animal fat and lint and honey. Honey kills germs. No bandage this time. Softly, Jesus is crying. So Mary gathers him into her arms and rocks him back and forth, back and forth. I love you, my son, just as I told you in the story last night. I loved you from the very beginning. Tonight, I'll tell you about someone else who loved you even before you were born. You see, your adopted daddy almost didn't marry me. There's Mary washing Jesus' wound on his head. Joseph's love. I decided to stay with my cousin Elizabeth until her baby was born. This was a long time, about 3 months. And all the while that I was gone, I missed Joseph the carpenter, strong and true. We were engaged to be married. We were betrothed, Yeshi, a very serious thing to be. It's the same as marriage, except that we weren't living in the same house yet. 8 days after Elizabeth's baby was born, I started to travel home to Nazareth. The little life in my stomach slowed me down, but I felt so happy and so excited because I had such wonderful news to tell Joseph. As soon as I was back in Nazareth, I rushed over to Joseph's house and knocked on the door. Joseph, Joseph, come out, I called. Wait till I tell you what God is doing for us. The door opened up, and there was Joseph, big as a bear, grinning and nodding and spreading his arms. I ran straight into those arms, and he hugged me with his wonderful strength. Suddenly, he stepped back and patted me on my stomach. Mary, he said, you're getting fat. Yes, I said, isn't that wonderful? There's Joseph. Joseph frowned, puzzled. It's good to be fat, he said. Well, I said, there's a good reason why I'm fat. A little tiny reason deep down inside of me. Joseph frowned harder. Mary, is this a riddle? I giggled and pinched his big nose. It's better than a riddle, I laughed. It's a living thing. Yesterday, Joseph, I felt that tiny little reason wiggle in my stomach. Wiggle, Joseph said. How can a reason wiggle? Oh, Joseph, I shouted, it's a baby. I'm going to have a baby. Baby, he said. Yes, this is what God is doing for us. A baby. I put out my arms so that he could hug me again, but he didn't. Joseph's frown grew darker and darker, like a cloud. This is impossible, he said. Unless. It's a baby straight from God, I said. Won't you hug me, Joseph? He lowered his head. He didn't look at me. His frown got so hard that it broke, and only sadness was left. I saw tears running from his eyes. Joseph, please hug me, I said. Oh, Joseph, hug me again. But he turned away from me. He went into his house and shut the door, and I was left alone. It wasn't his baby, you see. He thought it belonged to another man, but we were betrothed. If I was having a baby by another man, then this was a wicked sin. Joseph, I didn't sin, I shouted through the door. Truly, I did not sin against God, and I did not sin against you. He didn't answer me. He didn't say anything. He didn't come out again. Finally, I went to my own house and fell on my bed and burst into tears. All day long, I cried. Joseph is a good man, strong and true. He always obeys the laws of God, and because he thought that I had sinned, I knew exactly what he was planning to do. He was going to divorce me and never see me again. That's why I was crying so hard. That night, my mother brought me some soup, but I told her I wasn't hungry and to leave me alone. So here you can see Joseph looking sad, and you can see Mary sad in her own house with her mother there looking in on her. Early the next morning, my father came into my room and said, "You haven't slept all night." I said, "Leave me alone." He said, "Should I tell Joseph to leave you alone too?" "Joseph," I whispered. "Is Joseph here?" "Yes, just outside the door." I jumped up and rushed outside, and there he was. There was my own dear Joseph, big as a bear. He wasn't frowning anymore, so I went to him and said, yes, he hugged me so hard that we both started crying together. He said, "I was going to divorce you." I said, "I know." He said, "But last night the angel of the Lord came to me in my sleep and told me that your baby is from God. He said that we should name the baby Jesus." "Jesus," I whispered. "That's exactly what the angel told me too." "Oh, Joseph, I was so lonely I thought you were never going to come back to me." "Well," he said, "the real reason why I came is to ask, will you go home with me right now? Mary, I want you to be my wife starting now and lasting as long as we both live." Oh, how the birds sang in the sky that day while I went home with my new husband, Joseph the carpenter, strong and true. You see, Yeshi, 6 months before you were born, a good man promised to love you as much as I do, your adopted daddy, Joseph. Now he has traveled south over a valley and over the hills, south to the house of my cousin Elizabeth. He's building her a whole new roof. It's a hard job. It takes a long time to make someone's house warm and dry, but he will come home when he is done, Yeshi, to keep our house warm and dry. And maybe he'll bring you a gift when he does. Maybe. Does your forehead sting now? No? I'm glad. Salt is the healing hurt. Sleep, my child, sleep tonight. And soon I will tell you the very best part of your birthday story. Here's a picture of Joseph fixing the roof of Elizabeth and Zachariah's house. And that brings us to the end of our second chapter of this story. And just want to ask you, as you heard that story, what do you think Mary was feeling and thinking as she came back and she was so excited to tell Joseph about the good thing that God was doing in their life with giving them a baby? And how do you think that Joseph felt when he heard that? How do you think Mary felt when she saw that he was unhappy? And how do you think Mary felt when Joseph left sad? And also, how do you think Joseph and Mary felt the next day when Joseph came to her and wanted to marry her and had the vision from the angel saying that that little baby really was from God? Well, boys and girls, I'm glad to be able to share more of that story of Mary and, of course, the story of Christmas with you. I want to remind you again that Jesus always loves you. He's always with you. He will always keep you safe. Thanks for listening, and look forward to sharing more of the story next week again. God bless you. Goodbye.